Hello and welcome to the 6th Func Prog Sweden this year. First, I would like to thank all our recurring guests and newcomers to the channel. Welcome to this meetup and to this Func Prog Sweden 6. Over to today's agenda. Ooh, we'll see if we can share it. Let's see. Ooh, up. Yay! Today's agenda. First up, intro by me, then functional Kotlin with Arrow by Karin-Aleksandra Monoid, and then over to Max, and he will do a presentation on how to hold a presentation in functional programming, in the functional programming meetup. Meeta. Then in the end, I'll do a schedule and summary. But first up, I would like to thank our video sponsor, Beat. Beat is an IT consultancy company based in Stockholm, and they have an office in Stockholm and in Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, where a lot of people and developers in Beat are working with functional programming. If you want to know more about Beat, please check them out in social media or on their webpage, adabeat.com. If you want to support the Func Prog Sweden community, and of course you want to, you should join the MeetUp community at MeetUp or follow us on the YouTube channel. And if you really like the channel, please buy a t-shirt or something else at the merch store at funcprogsweden.myspreadshop.net. This is where you can find these t-shirts and other things. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the YouTube chat, and I will ask the presenters, read them up, the questions for the presenters in the end of their presentations. So, let's start. Our first presenter, Functional Kotlin with Arrow by Karin-Aleksandra Monoid. Yes, Karin, welcome to Func Prog Sweden, Karin.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the stage is yours.
All right, thank you. I think you don't see my screen properly shared. Is that right? So it's not full screen. Because it's full screen for me, but the preview that I see, it's not. Okay, let me reshare it. Yeah, cool. So yeah, the most difficult part of every presentation is like share your presentation properly, even if you checked everything, and then connect your laptop to the big monitor or something. So yeah, never works. So hey everyone, my name is Karin, and today I'm going to talk about functional Kotlin with Arrow. So a small disclaimer, I prepared this talk not for like very experienced audience in functional programming, but this talk is based on my experience on working in the company with like typical enterprise Java developers, and is more like how to convince people to use Kotlin and more importantly, use Kotlin with functional elements, and especially with one of my favorite libraries, Arrow. A bit about myself. So I'm a senior software engineer working at Circle CI, but at Circle CI, we don't use Kotlin. We're doing Clojure and Golang here. But back in the day, I used to be a Kotlin developer and also have background in Scala, also on frontend, so for Scala.js. I'm living in Potsdam in Germany with 2 cats. So maybe you will hear them meow because they want to add their take on functional programming. Don't be mad at them. They're really talkative and friendly. So I'm also a Google developer expert in Kotlin, and you can follow me on Twitter for more articles or announcements. So let's get started. Today on our agenda is what exactly is Arrow, what kind of library is it? Non-empty list as an example of domain-oriented functional programming, either as another interesting example of handling errors, and also scary part of monad comprehensions. So what is Arrow? Arrow actually is a library that consists of multiple parts. So there's core, FX, optics, and meta. So today we are going to talk only about Arrow core, which adds more functional programming into Kotlin. So in Kotlin, we have some elements like we can do map, flat map, but this library gives us more opportunities to express ourselves. And for example, let's start with non-empty list. So let's imagine we are working in some fintech company and we have some payments that we are sending to our client. So a payment is described as follows. It's not as important, but there are some fields, phone reference amount with some types. Some fields are required, some fields are not required. And the question is, so, well, can we send the JSON that you can see on the slides? So is a list that is empty valid input or not? So the answer is from the software engineering standpoint, typically it is. So like an empty list of payments is a list of payments, sure, why not? But sometimes it just doesn't make sense. For example, we are guaranteeing that payments are always there. So we can restrict our domain model, for example, using non-empty list. So a non-empty list guaranteeing us that if it's created, it should be always full with some elements, or at least not be non-empty as the name says. And for example, we cannot create non-empty list of, but we can create it with some elements. So looks pretty nice. Well, sounds interesting. So is there anything that can help us? Well, before I go to the next part, for non-empty list, it's easy to integrate in your existing projects because, for example, for non-empty list, there are also the integrations written, for example, for serialization library called Jackson. So everything should work out of the box. And I really like that it's like really simple and can be added to any project. So what else? Let's take a look at either another concept that is really popular in functional programming. But before, let's take a step back, like really back to Java. So let's talk about Java exceptions. Well, typically, if we writing our code and we know that something may go wrong, we're writing something like this. If something's wrong, throw new exception. Well, next, we are handling it in the signature, stating that this function actually throws some exception, and somewhere else, whenever we call this function, we will handle it in a try-catch block. It's a working approach, so it's like really simple for understanding. You can see what kinds of errors and exceptions you can expect, and the value that you're getting is like a single layer, let's say. So like nothing wrong with this approach. Let's take a look at a more modern Java than you may find in a bank, so like Java 8. Let's use a stream API from Java. Can we write something like this using our test function that throws a checked exception? The answer is like not really. because a Stream API doesn't like functions inside it with checked exceptions, and you should either like put try catch right in the middle of your nicely looking stream, which is like may not look in the best way and be not like the best readable code. Or a typical approach for that is wrap your function that throws a checked exception into a function that doesn't throw a checked exception, and then wrap it again, okay, or rather unwrap to see to derive what was wrong, because or what may went wrong, because we don't only want to have a happy path, but also know that something may went wrong and handle it somehow. So this may not look like the most promising code. Can we solve it somehow better with Kotlin, for example? Yes, we can. So no more checked exceptions in Kotlin. So like by default in Scala, Groovy, and everyone else. So how would you write this exact function with stream that we've seen on the previous one of the previous slides with Stream API? Well, in Kotlin, it would look quite simple, and yeah, that's it. Is there any problem with this function or with this code? Well, it looks nice, but sometimes we know that something may go wrong, and we want to somehow see it right now in place. So are there any mechanisms in Kotlin for that? A typical approach that is used widely in a Kotlin standard library is saying that function will either give you some result or just return null. For example, to string or null, to int or null from string will either successfully transform your number to int, or just say, okay, it's null, sorry. There is nothing wrong, again, with this approach, but the only thing that is, well, that sometimes won't work out for some code is you can only say something went wrong. For example, for a string to int or null, one may expect, okay, for unhappy paths, they might be an option that it was not an integer. So for example, long, or this was not a number at all. So like just some random characters, Unicode, whatever, and you only get null, and you cannot really say, okay, this null is for this, and this null is for this. It's not working like that. So yeah, for simple functions, this works, of course, but what are the other options? In Kotlin, there is also a class result that is oriented on chaining and catching the exceptions as errors and whatever. So it's really easy to use it to avoid like Hadouken-like code when you have try catch inside try catch and inside try catch. Well, the only thing that I don't like on this code, okay, there are two things, like it's not like really expressive still, and it's really eager, like run catching will consume everything that may go wrong. So for example, out of memory error or cancellation exception, so like everything, and hide it from you. And I honestly didn't like to figure it out, where is my out of memory. So, but yeah, this may be an option for you if it fits. well, if it consumes everything, so can we just describe everything that happens? And in some situations, we actually can. So for example, let's say we are investors, and in real life, of course, there are only 3 options that may happen from our investments. So first option is we successfully invested, so success. Second option will be like the moon was full, which is why all our investments like failed. And the third option will be like global financial crisis happened. So like only 3 options, trust me, I have a degree in financial technologies. It always happens like that. And we can describe all of our failures of our our errors in our API, just like that. Not every time, but sometimes. And what's interesting in this exact scenario, you can see that there is only one success, but multiple failures. And it's actually a very popular pattern in functional programming called either. Either is characterized using 2 types. Typically in Kotlin, Scala, and other languages, there is a mnemonics that says right is right. So the right side type says which value we will have, which type of the value we will have in case of success. And left says, okay, here will be the failure. So in our previous example, either will be just success, and full moon failure and global financial crisis will be some kind of failure. So, and we can use it for describing happy paths, which and failures, which I will describe slightly later. But before that, there is a similar type called validated. It's almost the same as either. When you look at its signature, it's also characterized by like 2 values, invalid and valid. The only difference is like, how do you use it? So for example, let's validate a user. Whenever we are using either, we're saying, okay, the first check which fails will be our failure. And for validated, we are collecting them all. So for user, test is an invalid phone. So either will be left invalid phone, and validated will say invalid phone and age, and also name. But in real life, if you can, please don't validate names and read an article about falsehoods programmers believe about names, because human names are really different for every culture and every person. And I don't really like when I cannot order a spare Lego block because my name was too long, or cannot order a ticket because my name has a dash. So please never validate the names in real life if you can. So, and there is not a mix, but the third option for validation called IR, which can be left, right, or both. So for names, I can imagine something like the left is a completely invalid name using, I don't know, cat emoji, like right is a standard name, and both maybe this name looks correct, but it's written using Cyrillic characters. So we have to follow up with user on this one, but it's technically correct, and we are fine with that. So, and the most popular option for all those error handling, I would say, is either. And what's interesting with either either is a monad. And why is it important for us? So do you know what a monad is? I'm not sure. So like, if you don't know, let's say the simplest simplification, let's say, of what is a monad for like typical software engineer is it's a type, an instance of which can be initialized, and it has a function flat map. So for example, this is a typical flat map for iterable in Kotlin. And as you can see, if you used lists before in Kotlin, you actually used monads. And for flat map, the idea is also the same. You're taking the value just as you would from a list and unwrap it. So, and as you can chain iterables, you can also chain iders. And what's interesting, the chaining of iders works as follows. So whenever something went wrong and either is either left, so something, I don't know, in this example, you couldn't retrieve stock info, for example, all the calculations will stop. And as a final result, you will get this either left. But if every result is either right, you're just continuing calculating. So for example, here, page info requires historical data, which is in either stock info, also wrapped in either, and user, which is also wrapped in either. Well, this isn't really looking that great. And since everything shares the same context of either, in Kotlin, we can rewrite it using the pattern called monad comprehensions. So as you can see on this slide, instead of writing everywhere a flat map, we are saying, okay, our common context is either, and we are doing everything in either block. And this magical bind function will handle all those transformations between like values and eithers and dropping the calculations when either is left. So in that case, you can use eithers as if there will be like simple values without wrappers around them. So just user stock info, historical data, just like regular values without like visible flat map. So for how do I write a function that uses either? So it's, well, quite simple. You can either explicitly state, okay, let's create either, return either left and either right. Or for more elegant code, you can say, okay, let's just say we have here either block without explicit wrappings to left and right, and everything should be handled itself. But if you're using modern Kotlin, I think Kotlin 1.7 works with that. You can actually use context receiver. And in that case, you don't need to bind anything to either. It will be handled automatically. You can see in context, in the braces, there's effect scope. So effect scope are those transformations like either. And if you call your function in the context which contains either, so where the context can be derived, everything will work just fine. So for example, here, so like here we have a block either, and we are calling our function get from DB. And yeah, we don't need our bind function anymore. because context. So what else can you use as a Kotlin developer from Arrow? So you can also see more core entities like option, eval, look into effects for concept of suspend functions. In Arrow, they have a bit different. They are a bit different. So like parsing part traverse for like handling them, and in optics to traverse the immutable structures. And yeah, I think that's it for today. So if you have any questions, yeah, I will answer them.
Thank you. Great presentation, Karin. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't have any questions, but I have one guy saying he will use monads are burritos from now and onwards. So it might come as a t-shirt soon, who knows, or a sticker. Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Still no more questions, but I have some questions. What was your first functional programming language? How did you get into functional?
So my first functional programming language was actually Haskell, and it was back in the day in the university, and it was like early in the morning on Mondays, and I was like, well, I will never use functional programming languages anymore because it gives me bad memories. But here we are, so I'm using Clojure, Scala, and functional Kotlin. So like, never say never.
Yes. Then you also mentioned before that you trained, you got Java developers to use functional programming. And that,
Yeah.
yes, how was that? How was it possible?
Well, actually, so this presentation was used for that, but the most important step was like explaining people that functional programming is not as scary as a lot of articles are presenting it. So, for example, we can say like a monad is just a monoid in a category and the end of functors, and that's true, but it's not helpful for an average software engineer. And we can say like, okay, like, can you see the list? Yeah, that's a monad, and everyone is okay, sure. That sounds simple. And I found that explaining the stuff in the simple terms really helped for starting it. And yeah, we started with non-empty list actually, and either blocks for handling exceptions. And everyone was like, okay, this is like really simple to read. Let's add more. And this is how I got Java devs into Kotlin with functional elements.
Nice. I got a question here in the chat. Can you stack monads on monads in Kotlin or Arrow?
Depends on what you need. Depends on what you mean by stacking. So I think typically if you are using this either block and you're having this effect scope, you should keep it to a single type of monad. So I haven't tried to combine them. So
yeah, the question was like, as you could stack them in Haskell and get different result types. Or different results, different.
Well, there isn't like a lot of flexibility in Kotlin with types. So like.
Yeah. What are you currently using? What are you working with on every day? Is it Java or some other popular language?
Well, right now I'm popular language. No, I'm using Clojure.
Okay.
It's like not popular at all.
It
And
is.
another language,
Yep.
and another language that I'm using is actually completely non-functional. It's Golang.
Ooh.
So yeah,
Nice.
it's really like contrasting.
Yep. with that, well, I don't have any further questions. Again, Karin, thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know it's very warm where you sit, so like here in the studio. Yes, so with that, let's go over to our next presentation. Welcome Max to Func Prog Sweden. Max has been here before. This is the third time Max is here. And now Max is going to do a presentation about how to hold a presentation about functional programming.
Yes.
Yes, welcome Max.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the first thing you need to do is to tweet that you are doing a presentation.
Okay, the side effect.
This is one of the side effects of starting to do presentations. You need to use Twitter.
Yes. And you never know what that
now
means.
It's the exclamation mark. I'm really terrible at emoji, so I'll just use an exclamation.
Yes. Let's fire up the laptop.
Yes.
And we hope that the presentation mode. Oh, look, it works.
Ah, but we needed the old man first.
Yes.
Thank you.
The nice picture.
Yes.
The stage is yours, Max.
Thank you. So you can't really see that, but Magnus here is like hanging on the side, like on a bar.
I'm trying to escape when you hold your presentation.
Ah, I see. Sorry. So, how to give a talk about functional programming? Like the most important part is basically to have fun. But of course, the first thing you do is you need to introduce yourself. So look at that amazing animation. So I used a code block here, or it's supposed to be anyway. Maybe it doesn't really show on screen. It's supposed to be light gray. And the idea here is that people who know programming, they know the command who am I, which prints your current username. So that's kind of a bit funny. Some animations, you have my contact information, where you can find me on Twitter. I'm also on Mastodon online. I might change that. So if you start following me there, you might see that I'm actually going to change instance, but we will see. Mastodon is basically like a federated version of Twitter. So it's like Twitter, but for open source geeks. It's a good time. Run your own instance. Anyway, let's go to the plan. The plan for today, first we're going to talk about basic building blocks. And this is true for basically any presentation, really. But it's going to be tilted toward functional programming or technical presentations, I should say. The importance of being silly. And for those who actually know why I wrote it like this, props to you. You did your literature history lessons correctly. Functional pitfalls. There are some stuff in functional programming language that you probably shouldn't mention and or wrap in burritos. And finally, the M word. I say no more. Okay. Let's get this show on the road. Okay, they disappeared. Maybe they come back. Please come back. Yes, they come back. Lovely. Okay, so the most important part of holding a presentation is to have some sort of theme, you have some sort of tale, doing storytelling and such. Then, of course, we need some animations like you can see here, and puns and jokes. Why? Because that's how you get remembered, right? If you have a tale, you tell a story, you capture the audience, right? And even though we're doing this in a technical setting, it really applies to everywhere. Think of as if you wanted to teach children something, and then you apply it to grown-ups. Works every time. Oh yeah, the animations needs to be silly, because silly animations, or like fun animations, makes them more memorable. I do suggest you always use animations because it makes it easier for the eyes rather than having a fast transition, having a fade through something. It's better for your eyes. However, avoid nausea. Don't move stuff across the screen, because then people get nauseous. There's many people out there that prefer reduced motion. It's called in CSS, and it means that you don't want animations. However, it doesn't mean, it like says reduce motion, right? It doesn't say no animations. Fades, very good. Moving stuff around really fast, not so good. So you're going to see that I haven't used a lot of animations that I could have. There are some, but not a lot. A theme and tail, it gives you consistency and it keeps you engaged, right? It's more fun to listen to someone telling you, like, we're going to have a train at the bottom of the screen and you can follow it and it will tell you where you are in your presentation, right? Then it's like just a bunch of blobs of text on the screen. And then puns and jokes. It helps to break the ice and it connects the room. And by connects the room here, I mean that, like, if you're in a physical room, this is a bit harder because I'm not seeing anyone in the audience, or except, okay, one. I got one audience. But if you're in a physical setting, you have to read the room, right? You have to look at the people, see if they're tired, see what works, make jokes, get some laughter, right? And that means that you create like a social group, the people who laughed at that funny joke, right? And that makes it so that the entire room is suddenly one unit. And that really helps, like, keep people engaged. Okay, let's talk about functional pitfalls. So, functional programming language can be hard, right? And it's good if you wrap it in a, like the burritos, right? That's great. It was hand-drawn. It was burritos. They were fish. It was amazing. That's something that you remember. It's visual. It's not a lot of text. So like instead of writing burrito or like fish burrito, it was actually drawn fish burritos, right? And that conveys a story. Another functional pitfall is, as you all see, how to connect your laptop, right? That's also a functional pitfall. Something I did recently, I did a talk on the code beam here, and I messed up a bunch of my animations. They did not fire in when they were supposed to, which was hilarious, and we all laughed, and it was a great time. And it turned out that hacking on your animations really late before you hand it in was not a great idea, as it turns out, right? So you need to run your presentation, look at animations, feel the timings, you know, making sure that you didn't accidentally do something. What happened to me was that all the animations were correct. They weren't triggered correctly. So some were like triggered when you click, right? But others are triggered automatically by following something else, and that's how you can make more complex animations. And I had accidentally connected some that I shouldn't have been. So in some cases, I should have clicked, and in some cases, I needed to click even though I shouldn't need to. Right now, functional pitfalls. Side effects. Like some programming languages have a very clear notation of side effect-free code and side effect-full code. Many languages do not, including functional programmers like Scala, right? You can do dirty stuff. At least I think so. Erlang, which I'm working, completely nuts. You can burn someone's house. They will never know. But I'm still not going to return to something that you can mutate, right? That's really hard to grasp. I would suggest try to avoid that. Stay in Pure Land, even though it's a bit like cheating because it makes it easier. It's also good for like this smaller tidbits of information that you're doing in a presentation. You're not trying to usually try to like teach an entire course in Haskell. You're trying to like get people, oh, this is fun, or look at this specific part of functional programming or whatever, right? Yeah, let's go. The importance of building silly. And silly here means not just using the standard animations that you have in your favorite presentation software. Draw some lines, do some custom animations, which usually means doing one of those move animations in Keynote, for example. And I put a bunch of them on a bunch of different stuff, and then I can move the entire screen in a way that I want, even though it looks like one animation. It's actually like 15. So in one case, like during the code beam, I moved a bunch of stuff to the side so I could do a transition that looked smoother than the default, which is called magisk flytt. magic move or whatever it's called, because that looked weird. But in that case, I decided to like do that all of the animation myself, right? And the end result probably looked like Magus Split for someone who did not like notice the small differences, but it was better, and it matters. Like it's silly that you need to do to have this attention to detail, but it really matters. Like if you don't have stuff centered, if you don't have animations that just feels right or are not too fast, not too slow, you notice it because it's like, oh god, that was not nice. If one of these letters were in a different font, you would notice it. It is not. They're all in the same font because I like to stay within my corporate brand. Which, by the way, we have just recently switched to corporate branding. So now Kira is actually have a new logo and stuff, which I'm using. Like this is the beta version of the Keynote template. I'm gonna blame everything that goes wrong on it being the Keynote template and not me. Anyway, importance of being silly. Let's talk about the M word. What is the M word? Well, we also call it monad. Yes. This is like, there's something called the curse of monads, which says that if you know how a monad works, you can't teach it. I'm not entirely sure if that's correct, but I think it's because a lot of people who like monads and write functional programming at that level are like professors. And to cite XQCD, functional programming gives you the elegance of abstract mathematics, and I don't know, something else about intuitive clarity of abstract mathematics, right? So it gives you like it's so intuitive. It's like abstract mathematics. Everybody understands it, right? Of course, monads are really everywhere. And just the other day, I explained that everything was a monad, sounding completely like a crazy person, you know. But the thing is, like, they got it because a process is a monad, a thread is a monad. It's a when you suspend a thread, what you do is you take the stack, right? You pack it up and you move it somewhere else. That's a monad. And then you can run it again by putting it back. That's actually bind. Right? It doesn't really feel like that, maybe. But a process is also a monad. Like everything's a monad. Because once you start saying everything is a monad, people's just gonna start running the other way. So I suggest that, if at all possible, avoid mentioning that something is a monad. Just teach them the thing. They don't need to know. Right? Of course, in the case of either that we just heard here, right? It's one of those most fundamental monads, just after maybe, right? You have maybe, which is just a or nothing, and then you have either, left or right. Of course, either I think is a terrible, left to right is a terrible name. I think that Rust and Scala and many have decided to name it result with success or error, and that's much easier for us to comprehend. It really is just either left or right, right? But having the different name helps. And if I say that result in Rust is a monad, it's going to be like, oh my god, right? But if I say that, oh, this is result, you can do this, you can use this question mark notation, and it will automatically return if it ever comes an error, that's do syntax, right? That's bind. But we don't say that. So I think a lot of Rusticans actually program using what basically like really is do notation under the surface, and they don't know it because it has been hidden and looks like normal code, just like the either blocks that we just saw, right? Especially the ones without bind even. If you ever use promises in JavaScript, you use the monad. Then it's both flat map and bind, which is actually the same. But there's also fmap and apply if you're in Haskell land. A little bit of information. And then I actually going to do something maybe different. I'm actually going to stop here and start taking some questions. But of course, silly animations. And you have a train. One of my colleagues asked for a train, so I added a train. Det är för dig, Daniel.
Yes.
And if you like this sort of stuff and like to work with Erlang, which is a functional programming language, and work with like many customers, talk to me. Send me a mail on max.nordlund@kiwi.com. We are searching for a lot of different positions in a lot of different teams. And you can find me on the internet on these addresses. Yes. So, questions?
Yes. I don't. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thanks, Max. I will throw myself back up on stage.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much for your presentation. There is no questions, but I have a lot of questions, of course. First one. This presentation had side effects. Joking with you.
Yes. I hope so. I hope people get engaged and want to, present at Func Prog MeetUp, man.
Yes,
this is a great
I
place
know.
to start.
This is why we wanted. This is why I wanted to do this. That people felt that, oh, how do I present? Yeah. This is how we can do it. Take your tips. So, what's your number one tip? If you take nothing with you from this presentation, but one thing.
Present something that you're an expert on, something that you really know, that you're a total nerd in, right? Because then it's easy to talk about.
Yeah, you're right. The only issue is then, of course, if they are experts in monads.
Then maybe choose a different subject. Maybe choose a different. That's the great thing about monads and puns.
Yeah.
Maybe is like a
maybe
it's a pun.
Yeah.
Actually, I wrote some really terrible puns in our Slack where it was like, "Oh, do you want some train? Like, will there be trains? No, I'm still in training, so I can't promise you anything. Maybe something, nothing." Like I made all of them. Either, maybe, nothing. You name it. Just, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yes, this is a question that I also wanted to ask. Should you do live coding?
Oh yeah, live coding is fun.
Have you done live coding, Max?
Yes.
Yes,
I have.
we know live coding is fun, especially when it doesn't compile, and you're like, which is it? Which row is it? Everyone sees it except the person that's live coding.
Okay, so when you do live coding, let's do some live coding. First off, what's great about live codes in general is that you can always press like on Mac, it's
zoom a bit.
Apple plus, otherwise it's like Control plus, and you can make the text way bigger.
Oh yes.
Yes. Yes, it looks amazing. You can make it even bigger, right? And then I prefer to use a REPL. REPL is nice because you can, like this is Erlang, right? And if you need something, you can, okay, what was it, lists, and you can just tap, and then you can be like, oh, map, what was it, oh, yeah, yes, right? For example, in
should you test your live coding before you live code? Or should you'd be fearless and just jump into it?
Yes. So for example here, like when you do maps fold, it just fold, right? It doesn't have a direction. But in lists you have map fold L as in from left to right or right to left, right? But I never ever remember the signature of these things. Like, oh, where's the map going? Where's the fun? Like, how many arguments did it have? So then you can look up the help function, right? And be like, oh, right. Oh, yeah, that is okay. Fun is first. Yeah. Lists, map, fun. Ta-da! You can also do that as a list comprehension in this case, but So, and I think this is fine. Like if you show that you are a human, right? We're not gods. It's
or
fine.
robots.
Or robot.
We think.
If you want to prepare, I would suggest that you have a bunch of prepared code snippets, and then you would use. So, if I quit here, like in there's something called pbcopy on Mac. You have xclip. in Xorg. I don't know what's the one in Wayland if you use Linux. I'm sure there's something in PowerShell if you use Windows. But there's basically a command that allows you to put stuff in your clipboard, right? So what you can have is that you can have on one screen, you can have like you can be in a directory with a bunch of different prepared snippets, and you just pb copy. Oh, I want. I don't know. Things apparently. What is things? That's very bizarre. It's 27K. Okay, I have no clue. I should probably not paste that. And you can also like you can also do this with these tools. The syntax is slightly different if you're on Linux, but or on Windows. I would suggest use that. In my case, I have a drop-down terminal. You can't see that, which is kind of the point. But
I see it.
So I have a terminal which I have a global hotkey for. So I can press that, copy something, press that again, and then I can paste that easily, right? Having that makes it so that you don't need to type. And if you get nervous, it might be hard to type, right?
And you get
jitters.
Yes.
You can also write it as a module in your favorite language as prepared function, like function 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in that case, you need to also view the code at the same time. Viewing code in your favorite editor is usually easy. Writing code is hard because that's some tips and tricks for live coding. Yeah.
Yes. One more question. How would you dispel the myth that functional programming is hard to read and messy in the presentation?
Hard to read? Oh man. Well, I've yeah, you get to see more animations again.
You get
like in Erlang. Erlang has inherited the syntax from Prolog, so it doesn't look great, right? But it's not super hard to read once you get into it. But I think that's true for everything. Like I was reading some Java code today because we have an old Java app, and I started to think, like, since I've been in functional programming on an Erlang lands for so long, I started like saying or reading the first part of a function or method signature as the name, but it's the return. So it's like, oh, this is the, no, wait, that's the name. Oh, it's, okay, so the return is RPC sender something, but it's set sender something, that's the name of it. And like, and I have coded Java at KTH, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say it's mostly hard to read new syntax. So if you can use familiar syntax, that's great, but don't sweat it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one more question on the same theme.
Yes.
What's your favorite, how do you show good looking, beautiful functional programming code?
Oh, I have a tip here. If you're, let's stop this again.
We're going into a live presentation. What about live coding? Forget about it. Let's go live presentation. Take things off Max desktop. We hope it's safe. We hope his communication department cleared out his desktop before he came here.
Yeah, exactly. Let me, let's see.
Oh shit, this is my pevd text. I shouldn't shown it live.
No.
Okay.
Oh, I'm just going to show like my private keys and stuff. You know what's going to happen then? Security is going to have a field day. Okay, I can show you. This project is open source, so this I can show you. I may have to also make sure that I don't accidentally show like proprietary code, right?
Sure.
So anyway, so you have something here, which is, in this case, it happens to be a metaprogramming language, a library in Erlang. It's not important what it is. You have some code, right? This code, as you can see, is syntax highlighted, right? It's rendered markdown. If I go into some file, in this case, maybe it should be just Marlin, sure. You get some bunch of syntax highlighting. It looks nice. I'm gonna hide that because it got some errors, I think. Anyway, you want this in your presentation, right? So what you can do, at least in this editor, is that you can mark some stuff and you say, oh, but I want to copy this record. So I mark it and I say Control C or Command C or whatever. Of course, when you do that, you actually only copy the raw text because you're supposed to paste it in like a program. But you can do copy copy with syntax highlighting like this. And now if I paste this in go back here. No, the other way around. Vad tog min mus vägen? No, där. And I do, and I lägg till en bild, så, paste. And I will show you. Oops. Oi, very, very small, but it's here. And then you can, oops. So. And you can make it bigger. And look at this, like I got the syntax highlighting with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's really nice about this is that you can choose your own pretty colors, right? And if you want to make it dark mode, you can make it dark mode. And then you can, in that case, I think you need to add like a square so you get an actual background, because I think it only copies, only the text got like the dark background, not like the entire thing, because it's text. But since it's actually text, right, it means that we can make an animation on this. So om vi går på begin här, you can actually do, you know what's really funny about this is that it's really hard to read because it's really tiny and it's on a screen far away. You can make it, type it like that. Of course, we need to make it longer, or maybe not that long. Så någonting, sure, förhandsvisa. And you can have it like this, right?
Ooh.
And suddenly you have it, right? And then, of course, if you need to have it pause in certain places, you can copy paste and remove some stuff and have a bunch of text fields on top of each other. This is especially true if you want to have like the curly brackets first and then fill in the middle, not top. So this is a tip. You can also copy like anything on a website and it should work, because if you copy something on a website, it usually takes with it all of the formatting, right? Yep. Which means that if you go into, say, I don't know, GitHub, make a gist, you can just go into the actual site, copy paste that.
Control C, Control
V.
Yeah. Yes. Well, the question was, sorry, I'm back to questions again. How do you show like functional programming? Because the question was more like, if you come from C, you have a lot of boilerplate code, so you can really, like in Java, you can follow everything. And then you go into magic functional programming. Voila. Get rid of a lot of boilerplate code and you do some list map.
Oh yeah.
Fun. How do you get people, you know, to follow the steps and like, this is how you follow the steps?
One thing you can do, as I alluded to, is that if you only reveal a few lines at a time, you can reveal one line. Do something, reveal one line. So if that's this is just types, right? So this is not that exciting. But if you go to like a function like this, transform internal, it looks horrendous. Let's go to, okay, this one. This one is okay. It's kind of big, it's kind of obnoxious, but at least we can try to talk about it, right?
Line by line, yeah.
Line by line. So first, maybe I would show these lines. We set some initial state. In this case, I would probably remove a bunch of these logging statements. This is just instrumentation. I would remove that for a presentation because it's not really important, which is true for this one, for example. Maybe I don't need to do all of this. Maybe I can even remove all of that and only do transform internal, because this entire catch is just basically there in order to like do logging. So you can simplify the code a bit, and then it becomes like, okay, I call transform internal and it will return these two in a tuple, and then I do a finalization of the forms and the internal state, and then I return the former state and the state.extra. Blah 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 blah. Right, and then we'll be like, okay, how does finalize work? And then you would show finalize, and it does this, and it happens to do in a specific format that Earl Lint likes, and if you do it wrong, it crashes the compiler, and you know, I don't know. And also, like if you have some really nasty function like this one, like this, oh, it's so lovely. Map fold subtrees. Just taste that beauty. What the hell does that even mean? Map fold is the combination of map and fold.
In a subtree.
Yes. In Ruby, I would call it each with object.
Okay.
Which is basically, it's like I want to carry some stuff on the side, and also I want to do an actual map. This is a map fold and list is amazing, by the way. If you want to keep state and transform stuff inside of a map, you need map fold. And in the end, you like return the next state and the next element, and you go through that. You can pile on some stuff. So, for example, you can do counting, you can do bucketing, you can do a bunch of different stuff, like as in a fold, right? But you can at the same time also be like, oh, but I want to do some filtering or want to do something else, right? In this case, this map fold subtrees is actually a map flat fold. Do I have one of those here? Map fold. Have I written it there? Oh, okay. I did not write it there, but like the actual function, or the actual function here is actually more of a map fold, more map flat fold, because it allows. Anyway, that's monad territory. I'm going to my monad territory again. Damn it. But yeah, like this is a bunch of code, but you can show that. And if you have some real world code or whatever that you want to show, remove all of this instrumentation that is not needed, right? And you can simplify it. You can have it at just this and go away, damn error. It's fine. It doesn't need to be perfect for presentation. Because you have way less space here.
Oh yeah, true.
So that's the tip. More?
No more questions.
No more questions.
No more questions. Thank you very much, Max.
Thank you.
Yes, which brings us over to the next subject and why we had this presentation. No, please stay, Max.
Yeah.
If you want to present at the coming meetup, look at this presentation and then contact me and we'll put you on stage. Yes.
That's how I got started.
Yeah, exactly.
I showed promises to Haskellers in JavaScript and tried to convince them that JavaScript was fine.
Yes.
It's a monad. You don't need to be afraid. That was the reverse monad, by the way.
Yes, exactly. So, as Max say, if you have anything you want to present or convince people that they should quit using Haskell and start using JavaScript, like Max is trying, then contact me and we'll put you on stage in the meetup. Our idea is to be back in August and then run one meetup per month during the autumn. Yes. So we're for sure looking for more presentations. And maybe we'll put on Max again and he will present his favorite functions and what he does with them in different languages. It could be really fun.
Yeah. Side note there. He
could be fun.
Okay, that was a good one. I have to. He actually shows the title for this talk and said, "Here,
yes,
do this." And I was like, "Okay, challenge accepted." Try it.
Exactly. Yes. Oh my God, what are you writing now? Copy paste. Oh. Yes. If you don't have anything else, just copy paste the talk, or copy paste talk.
Copy paste.
Copy paste talk.
I should probably say code here.
Oh, copy paste code. Yes,
that sounded more reasonable, but that was not nearly as fun.
Yes. Well. Yes, we got some applause in the chat. Well, thank you for enjoying the good I think it was a really good presentation, Max. Yes. And we are back in August, and thanks everyone for watching. Bye.